Hi everybody, so nice to see you today. I'm super excited to connect with you guys. Even though I can't see your faces, it's nice to know that there are people out there and wonderful to connect with neighbors all around the globe, no matter where you are. So today I'm really excited. I know that I've put up one video before about a Mel Robbins book that I really liked and got a lot out of called The Let Them Theory. And that is a great one. And I'm here with another one today. This time it's a memoir, so to speak, written by Belle Burden. It's called Strangers. You may have seen it at your local bookstore, or you may hear about it from a friend or that sort of thing. It is a really good book. I loved it. I actually, in full disclosure, listened to it on Audible. Just because my vision's not so great anymore, so sometimes it helps me to listen to books instead of reading them. However, I do also think that it's super great to actually read a book and read the words. It's so fun to imagine the voices and things like that yourself. But I just wanted to dive right in and share my thoughts on the book so far. I did finish it. Full disclosure, if you haven't read the book and you're planning on reading it, there may be, I don't know, spoilers. I'm going to ask some questions that came to my mind while I was reading the book that you might want to think about. This is not the whole book. I don't think. Maybe I'll do another one that dives into the middle and the end of the book. But at the beginning, let's just dive in. First of all, Belle Burden is a real person. She's a real human being. And she basically had an incredible experience. She was married for over 20 years. And after 20 years of being married, and during the COVID pandemic, she finds out that her partner is having an affair. And her world falls apart. And, for a lot of people I know, the one thing that's super interesting about the COVID pandemic is I think it was super interesting energetically. A lot of things happened. A lot of relationships ended. A lot of relationships got started. It was kind of I think of COVID as kind of an accelerant to something that maybe was already happening, and it brought it out, So an enhancer or an accelerant of the existing energy that was already on the earth. So I will share my personal connection with this book later, but first I just wanted to share a bit about the intro, the first couple, maybe chapter two, without giving too much away, because this is a really good book, so you should go get it and read it, and maybe even think about, maybe a book club it doesn't have to be anything fancy. I think when I hear book club, I hear like fancy sandwiches and things like that, but it can just be a friend or two, or just yourself and taking a look at the book and doing like we're doing right now, where I'm sharing some of my thoughts with you on YouTube, and you can or Instagram, Facebook, that sort of thing, and you can listen and read it for yourself. What I wanted to share today are some thoughts, some musings I've had as I've read it, some questions that came to my mind that I think one really great thing that I think Belle Burden does is she brings issues and emotions, thoughts and questions of how a woman handles betrayal in America and elsewhere. I say America not to exclude other places, but because women have different rights in different countries. And so, how Belle Burden handled the crisis wouldn't necessarily be how I would handle it, but especially it would not be how, maybe someone else would handle that in another country, just because we have certain social constructs, right? So I think that's super important to point out. So let's get to it. Again, Belle Burden just is a fabulous writer. I mean, one thing that I took away from this, just so you know, is Belle Burden was not a published author before writing this book, okay? That's what's, aside from, her beginnings, is that she had this incredible experience that's contained in the pages of this book, which she initially posted on a modern love article in the New York Times. And from there, this book developed, right, from that first sharing. But aside from that, she was a lawyer in her life. So one thing that's really great that I took away from this book is it's never too late to get started, right? To find your passion, to share your story. You know, if you've seen any of my other videos, I love stories and I love learning about people. And this was a really fascinating example. I wanted to talk about a few questions that came to my mind as I was reading the book. And then also I'm super curious to hear what kind of questions or thoughts you had while you were reading it. So I thought what I could do is divide this into maybe a section of 3 or 4, because if you were having a book club or something like that, you might have 3 or 4 meetings where you would talk about a book that you're going over. And one thing that a teaser in here in the foreword is that Belle was called Belle the Good. And so automatically one question that comes to my mind is how much of our energy as women is spent trying to be good. And we all want to be good, right? But does being good, or that effort, putting that first, come at a price for ourselves? And I think that Belle does a really good job of exploring that through her pages. You can definitely see that much of her life was spent trying to please other people. And I know we've talked people, you know, you've heard of people pleasing. Everyone's heard of people pleasing, right? But I mean, the true cost of what happens to us and to our souls when we devote so much of our time trying to be good. And what does that mean? Like, what does good even mean for ourselves and for other people? And is it wrong for that to be our most important priority, for us to want to be good? I mean, I think that's a really valid question that comes up. Now, one difference between Belle and most of us is that Belle is very wealthy. So that's a big difference. And at first I thought, when I started reading the book and it goes right into, you know, when Belle starts describing the situation, her home and what it was like, you get right away, okay, Belle is rich. Belle's wealthy, right? So at first I was thinking, am I going to be able to get into this book? Because maybe I'm not going to be able to relate to her experiences. Certainly there were times in the book where I was like, okay, wow, this is wealth on a whole new level that I'm not, and most people in the US and anywhere will ever be familiar with, right? And at the same time, there are so many similarities, right, between a poor mom who's trying to make things work and herself. But then there are some striking differences, especially for women who are in a relationship where it's coming to an end. I mean, for a lot of women, especially if they haven't been the one that's working and they've been home with their kids, that's a huge financial crisis, right? Like, what am I going to do? And in fact, actually, it's scary to Belle too, even though she's in a very different societal strata from most of us. You realize that people worry about the same kinds of things no matter where they are. And she is very quick she's the first one to point out her privilege, and that she, you know, some of what she will describe was really hard may seem silly or, you know, out of touch. But I really appreciate her vulnerability in saying that it was still really hard. But the real question, the number one question that came to my mind as I began reading this book, and I'm going to have to put my readers on because otherwise it's going to be harder for me to read the pages. But anyway, she talks about, you know, initially, I mean, it's not a surprise. I think it's not a spoiler alert that Belle finds out almost right away that her marriage that she loved and she thoroughly enjoyed is coming to an end. And in the initial aftermath of this, or in the initial wake of this horrible storm, she talks about her kids and trying to shield them from what's happening, the tsunami, the flood that's coming in and inundating her. And she says that, you know, she did things like she went almost right away. One of the first things that I noticed she did is, I'm sorry, the reflection on my lens is bothering me. I think it might bother you guys too. She's extremely, she finds out the news and her kids are home. And one of the first things she does is she goes to the bathroom and she starts crying, but she turns on the shower or the bath so that her kids won't hear. And you can definitely tell that she, especially in the beginning, is doing everything she can to protect her kids from this horrible news. And they're all in lockdown because it's the COVID pandemic. So anyhow, the question that came to my mind is, how much, our instinct, I think, as adults is to shield children from scary news, especially if it's a major life-changing event that's a disruption to the family, right? I mean, I cannot tell you, I was married for 20 years. Interestingly enough, Belle and I have some parallels. I was married for 20 years, and during the COVID pandemic, if you've seen, I have another video that kind of just touches on it. My relationship came to an end, my marriage that I'd been in. So I definitely could relate to that. I think there's a lot of you that saw huge, again, shifts in society. But I wanted to, on my own family level, I wanted to protect my kids. And I had kept silent for so many years, to a large degree, trying to protect my kids, trying to do what's best for them, staying in an unhealthy relationship and that sort of thing for them. And as I was reading about Belle, basically kind of keeping some secrets from, her kids, but doing it for all the right intentions, right? The right reasons. And she's trying to protect her husband, James, in case he comes back, to protect his image, and trying to keep them calm when there's already a lot of scary things going on with the COVID pandemic. But my question is that always, as a whole, should we do that to our kids? Is it helpful to keep things quiet and be silent and go to the bathroom and scream and cry when we're really upset? Or do they need to see some of that? And if so, then how much? How much do we shield them from? How much do we show them of our own pain and suffering and the suffering around us, right? I mean, I think that's an incredible question to ask. And like many of us, Belle thinks her kids don't know, but they know more than she thinks that they do, right? And how often is that the case where, after my divorce, my kids were like, yeah, Mom, I knew that there were problems. I would hear this, I would hear that. They see things, right? Kids see things and they hear things. And so is that even potentially more destabilizing when we're acting like everything's okay, but inside our world's falling apart? Children are very oftentimes connected to their parents, and they can see things, they can feel things. So does it create a dissonance in their mind that confuses them? And to what extent do we shield the behavior of a partner who is hurting us or hurting our kids from? How much do we shield our partner in an effort to try to preserve the relationship? that maybe we have with our partner, or that they have with the children have with their father, stepfather, stepmother, that's mom, that sort of thing. So that was one of the biggest questions I took away from this. And I really hope that you'll take a moment and dive into reading this book. And I'll come back with some additional questions that came to my mind. And really, honestly, I said that my biggest question or thoughts, about this was, how much do we share with our kids and how much do we conceal? What's the balance? What's the best way to do that? And I know one thing's for sure, I think anyway, is that there isn't a best way. There's just us doing our best. And there's no, cookie cutter, like one size fits all answer to that, I don't think. But I would really love to hear comments that could maybe help illuminate my mind and give some perspective. So for me, what I found is that I thought I was shielding my kids and protecting them, but I think I was really causing a lot of confusion for them. And then as they grew older, I realized that I think kids need to know that life is hard, but we just want to protect them. So okay, life's hard, but okay, how hard? How much of the hard do we show them, right? So a really thoughtful question that I appreciate, that was evoked by reading this very thoughtful book. And then the next thing is the COVID pandemic, right? I mean, I got certified a couple of years ago in health and wellness coaching, and I had thought about, I thought about starting a group, an online, support group for people who had been through COVID and still hadn't quite processed everything that had happened and needed and weren't, I still talk to people today who say, I just still I don't know where I'm at with COVID. I'm not where I was before. I had these habits, especially like I hear people say, I heard someone saying, I just started putting weight on during the pandemic. I wasn't around people and my gym was closed and I just got out of my routine. And, a lot of us, I think, are still there. We're still in lockdown and we haven't moved past that. And so that's another, I think, super thoughtful, important question is, what did I get from the COVID shutdown experience? And are these things that, how much of it are things that I like and that have helped enrich me? Or maybe these are lessons I've learned, but maybe it's time to move on and find either come back to those habits or ways of life that we enjoyed beforehand that were healthy for us, or maybe there's a blend, but maybe we find some new ones, right? We find some new ways to live in this world that's different, because one thing's for sure is that change is inevitable. And that's another thing too that I really appreciate again about this book is just Belle sharing so vulnerably the reality that changes happen in our lives and we can hate it all we want, but it's still there. And, you can, as a parent or if you're around young children, you know that you can wake up feeling terrible and then their kids are still there and they need breakfast and they need us to take care of them. And it's beautiful. It's poetic. I love it. So read the book and then please comment your thoughts, because I have so many thoughts that came. Share with me what you think about after diving into this book, and I'll probably circle back and do another 2 of these. Again, go get it, read it, share it, talk about it. And if you have a book that you like, that you think I should read and that we should share and talk about, let me know in the comments or send me a message so that we can take a look at it. I love discovering new books. Thanks.